Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Human SOS show for this week. We're on episode 139, and hope as you join us that you will be sure and tell us where you're joining from and want to hear your thoughts and comments along the way as well, because your engagement is always a benefit to the show, much better than if just Anton and I sit and talk about the topic. So please join us as we discuss our topic for the day. And Anton, you want to introduce that topic?
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. As you know, we're going through some tough times, in society from an economical standpoint. Doesn't matter what part of the world you're living in, you're probably feeling some economical headwinds that are causing problems. Me and Kevin wanted to talk about something that is relevant to the current times, which is job loss. We've seen quite a few companies, a lot of giant companies laying off significant amount of people towards, half of last year. And starting out this year, we're seeing Google, Microsoft, Amazon, 10,000 people a pop or so being laid off. And that's hard. That is very challenging. If you've ever gone through a process of losing your job, especially unexpectedly, it is not a great one. It doesn't feel good. It destroys you from the inside out and creates all sorts of havoc. And we want to talk about how to deal with that today and help people to survive it, right? It's not a time that you're ever going to thrive, but get through it with as little damage to you and your mind as possible, right? So, Kevin, have you ever dealt with a job loss, like some unexpected job loss?
Yes, actually, I have. And I got reorganized out of a job that I was on, and it was actually, unfortunately, very sudden. I had no idea it was coming, and then I got called into the CEO's office, and uh, after getting to work that morning, and I was summarily told, "Well, we are changing direction, and we are uh, shifting priorities, and we are no longer going to need you. So go back to your desk, pack up your stuff, and we will help you get your things to your car and have a good day and move on." And it was a very big shock to the system because, first of all, unexpected. And then, second of all, it's only the second time in my entire life that I have not left a job voluntarily. And the time before that, I was in high school working part time. So, yes, and it took me several days to just kind of process it and consider, okay, so what's next, and um, how are we going to work through this, and so on. And so, yes, it's quite a shock to the system having to deal with it because it challenges so many aspects of our life, and from livelihood to self worth to what did I do wrong to just, all over the place. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, end of this month in 2017 was a time where I was fired from a role. I wasn't fired from a job completely, but I was fired from a leadership position, moved to a lower leadership position, and it wrecked me. I mean, it really wrecked me really badly. And the reality is, my girlfriend tells me this all the time. She's like, you have PTSD from that experience. Like,
Mm.
you constantly now are looking around corners and worried you're going to lose your job, like you're not doing a good enough job, and you're doing great. But no matter what happens, you have that pulling you down, thinking that that's going to happen again. And that's the truth. I think, like, once that happens once to somebody, that high alert mode is always on. I'm always paying attention. I'm always worried, like, what's going to happen. I'm paying attention to the economy a lot more. I'm paying attention to things that I didn't used to pay attention to because I'm worried that this is going to happen. And the way that it felt, it was just awful. I mean, it was to I to this day don't believe that, it was my fault, right? Like, I've accepted it, I've come to peace with it, I've done my forgiveness, but to this day, I don't think it was my fault. Like, did I have some things to do that could have done some things better? 100%, but like everybody can. And now I'm just so hard on myself with everything Like, I don't celebrate no wins at work, nothing like that. I feel like an imposter all the time. Like, I feel like and it's all from that experience 5 years ago. And I think I probably need to go to therapy for it. It's not a joke. Like, I'm laughing about it, but it's really serious. And I'm sure a lot of people out there have experienced that. If you have in the audience have experienced job loss, whether it be, being let go from a layoff standpoint or fired, type it in the comments. How did that make you feel? What did it do to you? Kevin, how about you? How did that make you feel when you lost your job? What thoughts were going through your head?
Let me give a shout out to Wanda. Welcome, Wanda. Glad to have you this morning. And just like a lot of what you described, it caused me to, once you kind of start have dealing with the loss of income and things, the feelings were, well, am I inadequate? Am I really not what I thought I was? Is just again kind of the imposter syndrome piece. You kind of have it tamped down or dealt with for the time, and then all of a sudden, well, you're really not who you think you are. You're not as good as you think you are. Type thought processes, and the other part that was for me is that I was in that world for many years, and so as a result, I was still having to interact with people that I knew through that job, and then those relationships became challenged. How do you deal with that? People that, in this situation, people that were part of the leadership of the organization are people that I had interacted with outside of the organization. And now you go, okay, are they still going to want to talk to me, or what were their thoughts? And then wondering what other people thought. Do they think I'm, for lack of a better way of putting it, in their eyes, am I a bad person? Do they view me as less? And so just tons of emotions and they weren't all at once, and it wasn't consistent every day, every way. It was like a roller coaster. And so it was tough to deal with. And it took some time. And in fact, like you say, in some ways, that's been seven years ago or so. And in some ways, I still deal with some of the emotional pieces. I still think about, I've forgiven those that I think were a part of it, but I still don't look at, for example, the CEO of the organization. He and I were very close, and then now we don't communicate, we don't interact, and it's just strange. And it does. I guess if there is a silver lining to it, it caused me to really do a lot of introspection and consideration, and look at what are my vision, mission, core values. If I got my priorities in order, and so yeah, that is an upside, is it gives you a chance to really do a reset. It's unlike a soft reset on your phone, it's a hard reset back to factory specifications, so to speak, and have to deal with it in that fashion. So it's right in our face. Welcome, Sharon. Always glad to have you with us. So, Anton, what were your initial coping mechanism?
Honestly, you hit on the first one already, and that's step number one is forgiveness. You got to forgive those that wronged you, and I don't mean that in a biblical sense. I'm just saying, like, let that go. Whenever you get laid off, you're going to be dealing with so many things that are real, so many things that are in the moment present that you're having to overcome. That thing that happened, that's in the past. The decisions that those people made, they're in the past. And constantly carrying that around is not going to serve you. It's just another one of those things. We talk about stress, right? And we talk about the bucket that fills up and overflows, and the overflow of stress is, water as it presents overflow of stress. If that lack of forgiveness is constantly eating at you, right? That's just one other thing that's pouring water into the bucket. And that's one of the things that's most controllable. You can't fully control how fast you find a replacement job. You can't fully control your income that's going to come after that, or how fast it's going to come. But you can control what's in your heart and what's in your mind. And that's step number one. And I'm telling you, this is important. I was harboring so much resentment, so much, hate almost towards my ex-boss that really burnt me and used me as an scapegoat. And, then I realized he's just human. Dude's dealing with his own stuff, dealing with his own problems, did what he thought he had to do, and handled it how he thought he had to handle it. But that's all that's out of my control. So I think that's step number one is just forgive. I try to think about it logically, as much as I can. I try to separate from, myself from the situation. I'm not this person. This thing happened to me, right? It's not about I'm not this horrible individual that was fired, that is worthless, that can't have value for society. I just went through a tough situation that led to this outcome. And that's all it is. And stay as logical as you can. That's so hard. I'm making it sound like it's easy. It's not. Like trying to stay out of that negativity and beat yourself down situation is very challenging, but that's where most of us want to go, and most of us need to avoid going.
Welcome, Alexandra. And I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I do my best. If I'm not, correct me, please. And Rick, good to have you as well. And I agree, Anton. The worst thing we can do is hold on to those emotions tied to the situation. And that forgiveness is a choice, but it occurs as a process and not an event. One of the things that I've had to do, and even still at moments, they are few far between and smaller, much smaller, but at moments I have to remind myself that I've chosen to forgive that person for what I believe was done wrong. And what happens is you keep making that choice on an ongoing basis, and eventually the emotions will catch up, excuse me, and come to the same place that your choice is. And so, definitely look at that as a first step. And that may include needing to talk through some of it with a family member, a mentor, or as Anton's mentioned, in some cases, it's worth going to a professional and talk it through, because we need the correct perspective on it. Because after we've started letting go of it, we still are faced with all the fallout of what seemed to be the implications of it, when in reality, once you start digging in, a lot of it is more lizards than dragons, as we talk about in our mind. But we have to get good perspective, and the more perspective we can get outside of ourselves, the healthier it's going to be. And good first step. Start immediately the process of forgiving, and it will be a choice, not a warm fuzzy feeling of, oh well, it's going to be a hard choice that we have to make. Welcome, Zaid. Glad to have you. And good. Thanks, Alexandra. I did it right, Anton. So let's see. Rick makes a comment. He says, "Been there, done that. Took a while for me before I found a job. I found a job I enjoy and was appreciated." That's another one. I mean, if you don't find a job immediately, then you kind of are forced to stew in it a while. And I know for me, one of the things that was rather an interesting struggle is the question was, do I go and apply for unemployment? And for me and my family history, I had been working decades at that point, and that was a hard thing to deal with because from my family, we never did anything like that. We didn't file for unemployment. We, as the old saying goes, pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps and move on forward. And in that case, it was not a practical consideration because, at that point, my income was such that it was an important part of what we needed to do to pay bills and things like that. And so, just start that process and hopefully minimize the fallout in terms of emotional baggage, because if not careful, if we hold on to it, that emotional baggage can do permanent or seemingly permanent damage in the process. If you're in a situation you've been in, the outcomes of a job loss now for a while, that makes it even harder because you go from, well, was I a bad person with the prior organization? And now is everybody looking at me as if I'm a bad person and won't give me a job? So.
Yeah, and talk to somebody. I think that's the next step is for forgiveness to happen. It's all internal, but to work through some of this stuff, it's going to help you to talk to somebody. What I was saying earlier, stay as logical as you can. Very challenging to do in that situation, and weeks, months, even years sometimes after the situation. So grab somebody that is a partner. I don't mean partner like a relationship, just that can sit down with you and partner with you on working through this together. And they will help you to reason through something that's very emotional, right? And it's really, really important to do. So sit down and talk to somebody, and then realize that, you're now beginning a new journey. It's not every end leads to, a new beginning of some sort. And now you're beginning the journey of job search. And you have to think about it in two standpoints, long-term and short-term. Short-term, of course, trumps long-term if it's survival, right? Like if you don't have enough money to make it through, then we're facing with things like unemployment. We're facing with things like applying for jobs that are maybe below what, you typically would take and below your experience because you need to fill like a financial gap. But really sitting down and making a plan, right? Really assessing everything. It's better to take a bad job because it was a choice than it is because you felt like you were forced to and there's nothing else around, right? Like if you assess the market and you go, you know what, right now I'm probably not going to find a great job. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop applying. Doesn't mean I stop looking. But realistically, I may have a hard time. So for the next 6 months, maybe a year, I'm going to have to take this job. Careful, don't get stuck, right? Like sometimes we get a job and then we get stuck in it. So just have the plan of how you're going to take that other job, work for a while, provide for yourself, for your family, whatever it may be, while continuing to, attain the job that you really want or really deserve based on your experience.
Yeah, and Alexandra makes comments, getting out of the anger and hurtness, grievedness for being rejected are good things too. Definitely. Thanks for that support there. One other thing, Anton, or two things, perspective-wise, that are always true. And if anyone's going through it, first of all, you're never alone. It will feel like you are alone, and that everybody has or will turn their back on you. It's not true. I know that Anton and I have even had people that we are willing to listen to, talk to, if it helps you to be able to maintain some hope and all. I know we're listening ears, and I believe that most everyone, if you look around you, there's someone there, either church groups, also community mental health groups, things like that. Second one is that you're not the only one, especially now. So it's nothing worse than feeling like we're the only one going through it. And you're not. I can assure you that you're not. So try to, and right now, if you're going through it, it's going to be lots of choices because your emotions are just going to be churning and all over the place. So those two things I can tell you complete with confidence you are not alone, and that you're not the only one going through it, even as much as it will feel like it. And you may have to even write it down on a piece of paper or sticky note or something and stick it on the mirror or whatever. But don't fall victim to the thing of, well, it's just you, because you get lonely like that, then it becomes really feels very desperate. And don't give up hope is the what I'm trying to say. Thoughts on that, Anton?
No, absolutely, 100% correct. I think we got a good comment from
Yeah.
Rick there.
I saw that. Yeah, I never drew unemployment. I worked 2 to 3 jobs to keep things flowing. I went from a 70K a year to 925 an hour. I would do it again. I learned a valuable lesson about letting money be a driving force for a job change. I probably wouldn't be alive had I stayed. Stress was insurmountable. Oh, I like that. That is taking the situation and to put it one way, what Rick's describing is that it's a good idea immediately to start counting your blessings. Okay, I know that's a little old fashioned, but at the end of the day, what are the positives? Because there are always positives, and if we can be and honestly find them and focus on that, that makes a huge difference as well. Positive that he recognized that the stress he was under in the job that he was fired from or lost, whatever, was going to kill him. So uh, that was actually a blessing in its own way, because sometimes that's what it takes for some of us to catch on to a problem like that, that we're doing a slow boiled death by the stress and everything we're dealing with. And there are other blessings that come out of it. For me, one of the blessings was people that chose to gather around me and say, it's okay, and help me with perspective. Found out that there are people that cared even when the chips were down. And that's such a valuable piece, because when you go through that and you start feeling those emotions of, everybody looks at me badly and things like that, it's hard enough. But when they gather around you, you go, okay, it makes you appreciate them when maybe you took them for granted before.
It's when I'm reading Rick's comment, I'm just thinking about working 2 to 3 jobs. The man started kicking. He didn't give up. He started
Right.
kicking real hard, and that's one thing that I like about myself as a person. When I'm down, that's when I kick the hardest, right? When the world's beating me down, things are tough. I don't know what's beyond my current moment. I don't know how long I'm going to be in this situation, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to keep kicking, and put some science behind that kicking. Put some science behind the madness, and the next step is going to be job search, right? And that's another difficult thing. But create some sort of a method, right? Like, because a lot of times we will judge ourselves based on outcomes, and we will say, I didn't find a job, I am worthless, or people don't want me, I'm too outdated with my certifications, whatever it may be. But the reality is, it's probably in the current market, it's going to take significant amount of applications to get a job, right? So maybe you say, I'm going to create 100 applications a week, whatever is a reasonable thing. And you celebrate not the outcome of getting the job, you celebrate the outcome of completing the applications, right? Because that's the controllable thing. And once again, try to stay logical in a very emotional situation. And I've done what I need to do. I've controlled what I need to control. And now I'm going to celebrate my actions. I'm not going to beat myself up from lack of desired outcome from finding employment. There's so many things going on, so many companies that are, basically cutting costs, and there's so many variables toward you getting a job. Don't sit down and beat yourself up about not finding employment. Just put in the action.
Well, and Rick, another part of Rick's comment that I think is so salient, and we are all about finding roots in situations, and he gets to a root about money. The value of money is there to pay bills, and I appreciate that. But the greater value for having a job is being productive and contributing to our family, our world. And if you are in a situation where it takes time to find a job, you can still be productive. Part of that production is to search for new jobs, like Anton said, so many job submissions, whatever. But during that time, be productive in other ways. I've known some people that, because of the lack of time constraints that was with the job, they find it a great opportunity to do some volunteer work and to contribute to others. In fact, there is a law of sowing and reaping. And so at that point, when you're hurting most, sow giving into someone else's life, because a byproduct is not the motivation, shouldn't be the motivation, but the byproduct is you'll get people pour back into your life. That's not an if, it's a certainty. And so just don't let everything be driven by money. Of course, be smart and take care of your needs. And in fact, some of the productivity is, how do I save cost? And that becomes a point of production. But a job, again, is about production. The money, prestige, any of that stuff is secondary to being productive, because that's part of our design as a person. I've got a friend that has gone through a loss in his family. And one of the things that he struggled with was sitting, and he was retired, so he didn't have to do anything to continue living. But the longer he sat and didn't do anything, wasn't productive, his mental and emotional state deteriorated to a point that he was having a hard time overcoming some of that pain. And then once he made some choices to be productive, it changed his world. And so during this time, don't think, because I don't have a job, I can't be productive. And if you will focus on finding a way to be productive, it makes a big difference. Let's see. Sharon sharing her story. She said, I lost my job. Now will be 4 years ago in 2019. Reason being is I did my job so well that I did myself out of a job. I finished before the deadline, and they had no more work for me to do. On the good side, I'm still in touch with the director, who was a friend before, and I work for him. Stress has put a damper on everything, because now I'm dealing with family health issues and I'm unable to find a job now. I'm just trying to keep everything together. Indeed. And perspective. Right now, if you were trying to work and take care of your family health needs as they are, that would be a lot of stress. And so hopefully the financial aspects are being able to be mitigated, but we just keep it in perspective. Your thoughts, Anton, on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's just honestly just sucks. I mean, there's nothing else I can say. Like, I'm reading your comments, Sharon, and I'm going, like, that's so hard, because like life is challenging for you as it is, and not being able to have employment that you desire, it's just over the top. So I'm glad that you joined the show. I'm glad that you hang out with us, and we chat about these kind of things, because you need an outlet, and I'm glad that you're able to share with us, and I appreciate it. I'm really hoping your husband's health gets better, and I know that's a tough one. So just prayers for things for you. That's really my thoughts.
Yes, I agree. Sharon has become a good friend, and we communicate regularly. And like you said, Anton, prayers. One of the things that hopefully you are part of a community somewhere, and at least share with that community what you're going through so that they can support you. And if it is in a church or spiritual community, one of the ways we support one another is through prayer. And uh, I am convinced that part of the reason I've survived this long is the amount of people that have prayed for me or still pray for me. So really consider that. Um, Something else that, again, looking at roots, folks, uh, as we talk about this, if you're going through a job loss, okay, it's a good opportunity to separate what is valuable and what is not, and what helps determine your value and what does not. And one of the common mistakes that we've made in our cultures is that our value as a person is tied to our employment. And it is not. It shouldn't be. Don't let it be. And make choices to really consider where is your value as a person. And uh, maybe this would be an analogy. The first many years of our life, for most, I was a little peculiar. I actually worked in the family business at 8 years old. So, but even then, the first 8 years of my life, I was valued by people, my family, everyone else, and I didn't have a job. And so our value isn't about a job, not at all. And our value is not determined by a position or a title at all. So try to really, as you go through this, explore where do you find your value, and really come to terms with that, because the more you can be settled in where you find your value, the more likely is two things. One, that you're going to move beyond where you're at. And second, it will help if you ever encounter that or other adversity, because job loss is a really hard one, but it's not the only adversity that we will face that will challenge our uh, how we see ourselves. But really focus in what is your value? Where do you find your value? And it may be you need to reconsider where you're looking for your value. And I have to say, one of the things that I continue to feel compelled to tell people more and more is that our value is intrinsic. It's not something I've earned. And that being the case, I can't lose it by making a mistake or do not performing well, whatever. Okay. And my value doesn't come from someone else. It doesn't come from people's opinion of me and their thought about what I do or don't do. And so they can't take it away. Even a boss that does not make good choices, or even if they do make good choices about us as an employee, that doesn't change the fact that we have intrinsic value. We're given that value when we were created. And, and maybe this will help. I don't know anybody that doesn't look at a baby and go, wow, that's amazing to see this new life, and appreciate the value of that person. Well, that doesn't change as we get older. So really take this time. Where are you letting your value reside, and reconsider it, because it's not tied to job, even though in our cultures quite often that's what we've done. Let's see here. Rick, boy, he hits one that's a another aspect, and that is it gets tougher as you get older. I was 52 in a tough economy in 2009. You got to think outside of the box. What skills do I have that'll transfer to another field? That's what I did. Uh, job loss is bad, but when you're over, I think the magic number is somewhere around 45. It's even harder because uh, there are stigmas, there are biases against people that are over 45 because you don't qualify. You are especially don't meet the unicorn that everybody's looking for. And so that's even tougher. And yes, though, think outside the box. And as Rick mentioned earlier, don't make it all about a financial consideration. It may be that you look at a job initially that pays less, but if it's a job that you can get in and demonstrate your skill sets, your abilities, and in today's economy, your attitude and your um, soft skills. Now people are going, hey, give me somebody with the right attitude, mindset, and soft skills. We'll teach them how to do the other stuff. And so don't miss that value as you're looking at other possibilities. Anton, what were some of the steps that you took when you went through it to get moving, if you will, and stay moving?
A lot of times people talk about actions that we need to take, and we've covered a lot of those right now. But what we always have to remember is working on the state that we're in, how we are, not what, why, and all those things, but really the physiological and mental state of how we are. So the most important thing that I recommend for people to do after job loss is find a way to get grounded, find a way to spend time in the present moment, because the thing that your mind naturally becomes is living in the past and the present and the future at the same time, right? You're constantly running through the past of what happened and all the feelings that are coming from all the actions, whatever, trying to understand, and at the same time constantly thinking about how you're going to survive, right, the future. And that's a really, really bad place to be, where you're being torn in two different directions and you're not really in the present moment. And that's really important, right? It's not just about like how you feel and all those kind of things. You need to use your mind. You need to use this powerful tool that the Lord gave us, and we have this prefrontal cortex that makes us human, makes us make decisions, it makes us observe things as they are versus what our lizard brain is making them out to be. And that's so key, right? So you need to stay grounded so that little lizard brain in the back of our brain is not beating us up all the time, is not creating false realities, is not making us do interviews in a poor way because we just seem desperate, right? That's what you don't want. You don't want to look desperate to an employer. But if you're constantly torn between the past and the future and the past, and you're living like that, your mind will feel like, way worse than it should. Your value will go down, right? All those things will happen. You'll tell yourself false stories, and you won't present yourself with confidence. So that's what you can do. Whether, we've talked about mindfulness many ways, many times, on how to get grounded, whether it's meditation, whether it's prayer, whether it's walking, whether, you name it. But you have to be very, very deliberate and do way more of it than you did before you lost the job in order to be at your best, to survive this period of time and land your next future job that is the job of your dreams.
And would you say, and I bet I wasn't, we weren't connected as friends back when you went through it, but I bet one of the things you did was physical movement, exercise, something.
That's always been the staple for me, but I take it for granted. But you're absolutely right. That helped me to get through things, that helped me to get to the other side. And I just don't want to box people in and say exercise has to be it. Whatever it is for you. Step number one, even if it's not fitness, it's how do I spend time in the present moment? It can be as simple as eating differently, right? Like just fully becoming present and sensing your food and chewing it and being really in the moment that you're in, not what's coming up or what's already happened in that day or whatever. So I can't understate this at all, because it's so important. But we don't think about this thing when we're dealing with stuff. But that thing has been under load even before you lost the job. Chances are it's been pressure even before that happened. And now it's already in recovery mode, but now you really need it to be at its best. So the thing to do is to get grounded and to use mindfulness practices.
Yeah. And I like, in fact, I learned from you, Anton. I avoid the term exercise because the connotations that go with it. But movement, get out and walk. It's not complicated. You've got the extra time at this point because job loss. Get out and walk. But one of the worst things we can do is sit in a chair somewhere and then compound it by turning on electronic babysitter such as TV or videos or whatever, and then just sit. This is not the time for that. Get out and move. If you have some kind of exercise that you do or like, do it. And again, simple one. Going for nice walks helps, in my opinion, in getting grounded, because we are beginning to take note of what goes on around us, what's happening in our world now that when we're working, quite often we miss because we're so tied up and distracted with work. Let's see here. Sharon shares a little more about her situation. I appreciate you both. I have been saying prayers because I refuse to give up the faith. I believe prayer does help me. What I have done was get more involved in volunteering in an NGO on LinkedIn. I'm involved with Global Goodwill Ambassadors Foundation. It helped me cope because we're helping people all over the world. It's a humanitarian organization. It's helped me tremendously. Also made a lot of good friends all over the world.
That's where I find my value.
Okay. So by doing that, it helps us get perspective and that feeling of productivity. Again, our value never changes. That's given from the day we're born. But that sense of productivity, that sense of feeling of contributing to our world is done through other ways than just a job. And sometimes what we find is if we do those kinds of things, they ultimately may lead to an opportunity from a work standpoint, because when you get out and you're engaged and involved in the community giving back, you meet people. And who knows, you might even find that the organization you're volunteering with may need somebody on their staff. Who knows? But get out and about and giving back as quickly as possible so that you have a sense of feeling productive, which all of us want and need. Let's see. Zaid has a comment. Maybe as one is working and making money to plan and plant the seeds for the cloudy days, that will come. Maybe have some investment that will give you a passive income, even if it covers one bill or helps buy a meal, whatever it might be, something coming better than totally zero income. And yes, one of the things that we should consider now, if we're not in that situation, is how can I make some preparation for that if it happens? And there's different ways to do that, and choices we can make. Your thoughts on that one, Anton?
I think it's spot on. I mean, it's one of those things that's easy to say, though it's hard to do. Even in the moments where there is nothing going for you, right? You feel like you can't find anything, you can't do anything. Just take steps towards that secondary income. If it's passive, great. If it's not passive, whatever. Just a second stream of revenue that can help out, and just start putting in the work. Even if it's 1 hour a day towards that thing while you spend 7 hours a day looking for a job and doing other things. But I think Zaid's spot on. You need secondary income, especially if it's passive, just for a peace of mind, right? Just to know that, like, if something were to happen, if I go through this again, I'm going to be better off. I'm going to be okay. So I think that's a great comment.
Well, and I want to go back to what Rick said, thinking outside the box. Um, this is not the time to say, well, that's the way I've always done it. And I would even purposely say, I'm not going to consider how I've always done it. I'm going to look at this differently and consider how I can approach it differently. And again, being a recruiter and being a quasi career counselor as a result, one of the things that you always look at is what's called transferable skills. Sit down and go look at your skill sets and consider, what are these skills that might work in a different field, and how can I apply them? And when you're looking at jobs and you read the so-called qualifications, okay, what a lot of times is not on job listings is the qualifications that are intangible. And you may need to focus on those intangibles, such as your leadership capability, such as your reasoning capability. So do look beyond, well, I've always been X, and so I need to just look for jobs being X. Consider different approaches, and that means doing some assessments of yourself. And this is also a good time to take some personality assessments and career assessments that are out there, such as I'm trying to think of free ones, such as there's the DISC assessment. There are free options out there. And I don't know if some of the others like Strength Finders, are there any free versions of that, Anton?
Strength Finders? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. But even that, they're not.
It's $20. It's
okay.
A lot for some, not a lot for others, but it's about, I think it's like $20.
Doing those helps you revisit perspective. And I'll give one for everybody. In fact, I'll put it in the comments section. But there is a site called Jobtimize. And frankly, it's one of the best career assessment tools out there. And little background on it is that the assessment tool is not based in the way traditional tools are. It's based in behaviors, and they've shown some of the science behind it and how that it's a better predictor of success in the job. And the other part is they've gone through what in the U.S. is called ONET, and they've taken all the jobs and profiled them based on behaviors. And so I would encourage you to look at different ways, and these assessments have value in perspective, because right now you're questioning your skill sets and your abilities and everything else. Taking these assessments gives you a picture, a more accurate picture of you right now than what you're feeling. And so it's a good way to consider the where you're at. Get in the moment by understanding yourself better. What assessments do you suggest, Anton?
Honestly, I think I like Jobtimize. You told me about it. I think that's a good one, because we're looking for things that are specifically going to help us with employment. But in general, like I also think it's time to look at yourself from a personality standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And like I just took yesterday an assessment called Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first time I ever did that. That's some spot on stuff. They had some, the way that I deal with things and how to deal with me. I sent it to my girlfriend. She's like, "Oh my God, this is gold." She's like, "This is so spot on." She's like snipping parts of the report, sending it to me. She's like, "This is so you." I'm like, "I know, it's crazy." But honestly, people, it's what I would say, and I'll leave everybody on this. There's two ways of looking at it, and this is just personal experience of what I've gone through, right? There's one way is I was at the top, I was peaking, and then I was knocked off, and now it's over, right? And that's one way, right? The second way is this is a reset, right? I'm taking a step back in order to prep my next launch, up, right? Creating that J hook kind of thing, right? Little dip right before we really start to peak and get way above where we were before. And that's what I choose. I choose to look at job loss. I choose to look at being let go, whatever it may be, as a reset, and an ability to move forward stronger and better. And what I did, and I'm proud of myself for it. And I'll just mention this: after this 2017 thing happened, I worked for the company for one more year, but I've been, the minute it happened, one foot was out the door. I was already preparing to leave the state I was in. I went after 2 different degrees and did a lot of personal growth and development to land the job of my dreams, something that I was thinking I'd be in my 40s doing. I ended up doing it in my 30s because of this thing that happened with job loss. If it didn't happen, the reality is I would still be in that company with a very low ceiling. So a lot of times these things happen, whether it be, for whatever reason, and we don't know the plan that's ahead for us. We just see what's in the moment, what's in front of us, and the pain that we're dealing with. But my encouragement for all of you that are going through this is look at it as a reset and a launch point with a few actions in between there.
As an old saying goes, when a window is closed, the door is open, or when a door is closed, the window's open. Approach it in that mindset. Zaid offers a good suggestion. He says, I try to live as if I'm still making the minimum income. I don't stretch myself way beyond my general means. Staying grounded is the first key. And that includes now, even if we're employed, to stay grounded, because the more grounded we are when we go through the loss or upheaval, we're better prepared. And then Zaid offers another. I'm not familiar with VARC testing, and learning about how you learn as a teacher trainer, train the trainer. That's important because a lot of people get in situations and they're supposed to try to learn something and they're not really aware of how they learn best. And I got to put in a little plug for our regulars here on the show. If nothing else, join us here, because if you're watching very closely at the comments, you'll see that our core group here are very supportive of each other and encouraging each other. And so if nothing else, join us. If you happen to watch this as a recording, join us live next time. Pick up and enjoy the value of being part of this group that are our regulars here on the show, because you won't find anybody that are more understanding, more supportive than this group. And we appreciate them, by the way, because at the end of the day, they're the value here on our show, more so than Anton and I. They've become part of our movement of the Human SOS. And so come join us and be a part of this community that we have here. Let's see, Zaid clarifies visual, oral, read, write, and kinesthetics. Interesting. Sounds like an interesting assessment. And yeah, Anton, I've done Enneagram before, and again, additional insight into us. Any of these tools are great to do right now if you're in a job loss situation. Again, because you learn about more possibilities of what you might be able to do. Plus, you're reminded of who you are and the value you are with or without that job, and whether others recognize that value is a challenge. One other piece, and I'm gonna probably get myself in trouble here a little bit from some of the experts, but we get caught up in our job hunt and we read, oh, well, this is the way to do this or that or the other, resumes in particular, well, you only do 1 page, you only do 2 pages, you only list experiences, you only list. And if it works, that's great. If it helps you get a job, but if it's not working, don't be afraid to look at them and say, okay, I followed your rules and your plans. It ain't working. I'm doing something different, and think outside the box. One of my favorites to tell people is go old school. Back in the day, the way to do it is you didn't just email a resume to somebody. You would, one of your ways of being productive during this time is get you an envelope full of resumes with a nice cover letter and go visit companies, go visit businesses, and ask, can you speak to the hiring manager, the HR, whoever? And worst case, they can say, no, they're not available. And you say, well, would you pass this along to that person? And if you really want to get inventive, find out who that person is by visiting the company website and have their name on it. And so if it's not working following the rules, then or the norms, ditch the norms and try something different. Be creative. One of the things that I've known some people that had struggled, well, they said, okay, I'm going to this company that they want to work for. And they said, I'm going to volunteer to be an intern. And I'm going to go to them and say, look, I will take the project or job or whatever that nobody wants. Let me try it on a volunteer basis and see how I do. And the person did that, and they were given the chance to prove themselves and landed a job. So welcome, Karen. I appreciate you being here. And thanks for being willing to look at the replay. Some people think that that's less than. I hope that what we share is just as good in replay as is live. I noticed that Alexandra makes a comment, and that is praying to the Creator is a good thing to make the heart lighter and put off some steam. Indeed, one of the values of prayer is just sharing a heart. And again, I don't know how everyone else believes, but I know that sharing my heart with my Creator makes a difference, because that is the one constant in my life, regardless of what's going on. I know my Creator's there and He loves me, and definitely there for me. Okay. Zaid making a little practical tip. Don't forget the email. Once someone told me that the reason is you're using Hotmail or your for your email. Who use that anymore? So, yeah, your way of communicating is an indicator. I hope I don't offend anybody, but if you're using AOL still, you may be perceived in a light that may not help you towards employment. So, good advice there, Zaid. So, any closing thoughts, Anton?
Hang in there, people. You're not alone. Just find help. Unfortunately, things are going to get worse, in my opinion, before they get better. But it's cyclical, right? Everything in our life is cyclical. When there's a valley, there's going to be a peak ahead. So keep trucking, keep kicking, and you'll get there.
And if nothing else, join us. And if you need to talk about it on the show, we have actually done some coaching sessions on the show. And if you were interested and willing, we can do that as well, because by doing so, everybody gains from it. Doesn't matter. So appreciate everyone being here. Thanks for, opening up and sharing your story, because we've all been there. And so hopefully people will walk away going, okay, I'm not the only one. So there's hope, and keep looking forward and reach out. Join us next Tuesday, 8 o'clock here on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on YouTube. If you have a suggestion of a topic you want to see, we're always open to that, because this show is not about Anton and I, it's about you guys. And we love dealing with real needs and concerns. So thank you, everybody. God bless. Have an amazing week. See you next Tuesday at 8 o'clock.
Bye,
Take care.
everybody.